He walked in the way Dave Chappelle always walks in, like a man who has decided the room belongs to him and is simply waiting for everyone else to figure that out. There's a particular quality to Dave Chappelle's presence that is difficult to describe accurately and impossible to manufacture. It's not confidence exactly, though confidence is certainly part of it. It's something closer to sovereignty, the specific ease of a man who has been to the bottom of things and come back and no longer needs to perform his comfort because his comfort is real. He settled into the guest chair with the unhurried deliberateness of someone who has learned, through very hard experience, the value of moving slowly. The audience responded to him the way audiences always respond to Chappelle, with the particular intensity of people who are in the presence of someone they have thought about a great deal in his absence. And Dave Chappelle had been absent. Not recently, he had been working steadily, brilliantly, his specials accumulating the kind of cultural weight that only happens when a comedian is operating at the intersection of art and truth. But there had been a period, a long, famous, much-discussed period, and the story of that period had been told many times by many people and almost never entirely right. Stephen greeted him warmly, the band played, and for the first several minutes everything moved in the careful, intelligent rhythm of two people who respected each other's minds and were enjoying the process of finding out where their edges were. They talked about the new work, about what it meant to be doing this now at this stage, with this particular accumulated understanding of what comedy could do when it was operating at its highest level. Dave was generous and precise and funny in that specific Chappelle way, the humor that arrives not as a joke but as a recognition, a sudden illumination of something true that you already knew but hadn't seen clearly until he showed it to you. And then Stephen set down his note cards. "Dave," he said, "I want to ask you about 2005. Dave's expression didn't change. He had been asked about 2005 many times. He had a relationship with the question, a practiced one, carefully maintained. "What about it?" he said. "Not the story everyone knows," Stephen said. "Not the $50 million or the flight to Africa or the breakdown narrative. I want to know what actually happened, the specific thing, the moment." Dave looked at him with the expression of a man who is deciding something in real time, weighing something that has never quite been put on the scale before. "There was a moment," he said finally. Stephen waited. "We were shooting a sketch," Dave began. His voice was different now, the performance cadence gone, something quieter and more careful in its place. This was deep in production on the third season, and the sketch was a race-related sketch. The kind of material I'd been doing my whole career, material that in my mind was doing what the best comedy does, taking something uncomfortable and difficult, and exposing it in a way that created recognition rather than just reaction. He paused. "We were doing a take and I was in character, fully in the thing, doing what I'd rehearsed, and then I heard it." "Heard what?" Stephen asked softly. "A laugh," Dave said. "One laugh from one person on the crew, and it was the wrong laugh." The studio was quiet. "I've spent a lot of time trying to describe this to people," Dave continued, "and it's hard to describe without sounding crazy. Because from the outside it's just a laugh, a person on a set responding to something funny. That's what you want, that's the point. But this laugh," he stopped. "This laugh wasn't laughing with the material, it was laughing at something else. It was laughing in a way that told me something about what the person found funny, and what they found funny wasn't what I thought was funny." And in that moment, in that single, specific, unremarkable moment, something that I had been not quite seeing for a very long time suddenly became completely visible. Stephen was very still. "What did you see?" he asked. Dave looked at him, and something in the controlled, sovereign presence cracked, just slightly, the way things crack when they've been holding for a long time and something small but precisely right finds the fault line. "I saw that I had been running," he said. "My whole life, my whole career, the whole thing I had built, all of it, I had been running from something and running toward something at the same time, and I had confused the two so completely that I couldn't tell them apart anymore." He paused, the pause had weight. "Growing up," Dave said, "there was a specific kind of laughter I was afraid of, the laughter that comes at someone not with them. The laughter that says you are the joke, not the thing I'm laughing about. I grew up around that laughter, I knew what it felt like. And when I was young and I found comedy, when I discovered that I could make people laugh, it felt like the opposite of that. It felt like power. It felt like I was in control of the thing that had controlled me." Stephen nodded once, slowly. "And I built a career on that feeling," Dave continued. "On the idea that I was using comedy as a weapon against the things that had hurt me, against the systems and the dynamics and the specific cruelties that had shaped me. I thought I was fighting. I thought every joke was a blow landed on something that deserved to be hit." He stopped. "And then I heard that laugh, and I understood for the first time, really understood, that some of the people watching me weren't seeing the fight. They were seeing something else. They were taking from the material something I hadn't put there, and I had made it possible. I had handed them the ammunition without knowing it. The first tear came then. Quiet and controlled, the way Dave Chappelle did everything with the precision of a man who has learned to feel things without being consumed by them and who had reached, in this particular moment, the limit of that skill. That's a terrifying thing to discover, he said. That something you built to protect yourself might also be capable of being used against the thing you were trying to protect. That the tool and the weapon might be the same object, depending on who's holding it. And I didn't know what to do with that. I still don't entirely. But I knew standing on that set, hearing that laugh, that I couldn't keep going without understanding it better. Without going somewhere quiet and figuring out what I was actually doing, what it was actually for. Subscribe and leave a comment because the most powerful part of this story is still ahead. Stephen stood up from behind his desk without announcement and walked around to sit on the edge of it, facing Dave directly. The formal structure of the interview was simply gone, dissolved by the weight of what was being said. When you went to Africa, Stephen said carefully, were you running from that or toward something? Dave thought about this for a long time, the kind of thinking that isn't performance that you can see happening in someone's face when they're actually doing it. Both, he said finally. I was running from the confusion, from the not knowing, from the specific terror of having built something enormous and then discovering that you don't fully understand what you've built. And I was running toward silence, I think. Toward a place where the noise of all of it was far enough away that I could hear myself think, hear myself feel, hear myself be something that wasn't performing being something. He paused. I've been performing my whole life, Dave said. Not insincerely, I want to be clear about that. Everything I put on stage was real, but there's a version of realness that's still a performance, where you're being real but you're being real for an audience, and I needed to find out what was left when the audience went away. What was Dave Chappelle when there was no one to be Dave Chappelle for? Stephen looked at him. What did you find? Stephen asked. Dave smiled, not the full smile, something quieter, the smile of a man who has been to a difficult place and found something worth bringing back. I found that I still thought things were funny, he said. When nobody was watching, when there was nothing at stake and no one to perform for, I still found things funny, and that simple, stupid fact was the most important discovery of my life, because it meant the thing was real, it wasn't constructed, it wasn't a response to childhood damage or a defense mechanism or a way of controlling what I was afraid of. Underneath all of that, underneath the career and the money and the complexity and the confusion, there was just a person who found things funny, and that person was enough. He had always been enough. Stephen looked at him for a long moment. Both eyes were wet, not overwhelmingly but honestly. Dave, he said, you just described something that I think is one of the most important things a creative person can figure out. Whether the thing you do is real when nobody's watching, whether it survives the removal of the audience, whether it's yours, genuinely, privately, irreducibly yours, or whether it exists only in relationship to other people's response to it. That's the question, Dave said. That's the only question, really, and most people in this business never ask it, because asking it is terrifying, because if the answer is no, if the thing only exists in the performance of the thing, then what are you, what's left? And for you, the answer was yes, Stephen said. The answer was yes, Dave said. Still is. I still think things are funny. I still want to say true things in rooms full of people, not because I need the response anymore or not only because of that, but because it's genuinely what I am, not what I built, what I am. He looked out at the audience, not performing for them, just seeing them. The laugh that night on the set, Dave said, I've thought about it 10,000 times, and what I've come to understand is that it was a gift, the most uncomfortable, unwanted, perfectly timed gift I've ever received, because it forced me to look at something I would have kept not looking at for the rest of my career. It forced me to go somewhere I needed to go, and what I found there, who I found there, was worth the trip. The applause that followed was the kind that happens when a room full of people has been taken somewhere unexpected and has arrived safely and is grateful for the journey. Not the reflexive applause of a television audience, the involuntary response of 300 people who had just heard something true. Dave Chappelle had left in 2005 because of one wrong laugh. He had come back because of what the silence after that laugh had shown him. And what it had shown him, the irreducible, private, unkillable thing that remained when the audience went away, was the only version of himself that had ever been entirely real. That night, laughter gave way to grace, and television remembered what it was for.